36 now for Harden.
Just showing
Y'all
out,
buying
man.
now that he gonna
showing out.
he gonna get in that top 5?
Yeah, I think he is. 11 of 21 from the field. He's already taken 12 free throws. You just saw him miss 2. That's a real rarity for him. And the Rockets trail by 5.
Should have 38.
63 to 58. That's exactly right. If my math is correct, yeah.
Carry the 1.
What? Just because I haven't seen you since you were, the thing happened.
Yeah.
With the ankle
My-
and the surgery.
My incident.
Yes. Well, what is most remarkable to you about this stretch that Harden is on right now?
Wow. One, we've never seen it before. And so it's hard sometimes to put it in perspective. When you look at the roster right now, not having Chris Paul, no Capella, Gordon, and they're winning with it. Again, they're not blowing teams out, but they're competitive. He's moved them into playoff contention when they weren't prior to that. It's remarkable. And you've heard other people say that. Like, to me, I think he's the best offensive player, complete offensive player I've seen in this era. When you factor in how great a passer he is, he's I'd argue he's one of the 4 best passers in the game in terms of his vision. And it's not always about your assists. It's about your ability to make all the passes and see all the passes. He can do that on top of his uncanny ability to score it. And he's doing this at a time where you are completely loaded to him. You're not as focused on anybody else out there on the floor. They don't have other creators or facilitators that you're that worried about. And they're not even shooting it well from the 3-point range.
I was going to say, they don't even have the arsenal of 3-point shooters that Mike D'Antoni would prefer.
It's just pretty remarkable to see what he's been doing over this stretch. And then again, the sustained level of it. Guys can go 4 or 5 games, 10 games.
Right.
When you start getting up to 30.
He's at 21 in a row for 30 points now.
That's just crazy.
He's averaging 50 over his last 4, and that number may go up.
It may go up.
It's going to go up tonight.
It's just been remarkable.
He's just, in an era of unique offensive talents, when you think about Steph and Kevin Durant, Russell Westbrook, LeBron, all these different guys, Anthony Davis, Giannis now, a 30-point scorer potentially without the aid of the 3-point shot. Somehow he sticks out in that crowd, which is really remarkable. In a point of emphasis where you got to get your hands off a guy. To be able to stick out in the crowd in this era is what's really crazy, and to do it in the variety of ways. I know he gets, this idea that he's a 3-point shooter or is he just a jump shooter. He can get to the basket whenever he wants to.
Sure.
He can get in the lane and finish. He's big enough, strong enough to finish around the rim.
And he'll take that if that's what you want.
Yes, so it's like the fact that he can get it in whatever ways he wants to, not dictated to him by the defense, is what sticks out to me. And the fact that you do it night after night after night after night, right now when your team needs it most, when they were 14th, and then he moves them into that top group, that gives you an understanding of just how grueling a process it is for him to do this night after night, which also in turn makes me shake my head at what Wilt Chamberlain did however many times he did.
65 straight 30-point games.
Which is just like,
Well, but to your point, though, the thing about even in Wilt's case, he had a significant physical advantage.
Right.
For most people. James, he's not the next level athlete either.
Right.
So for him, it's really the skill and just the mindset. To go out and do this every night, like knowing going into the game, some guys might every now and then you feel like, man, I could get 40 tonight.
Right.
He goes in there again like, I gotta get it.
Yep.
Right. Right. No, it's been that way, and I believe if I heard correctly, he's hit 11 baskets tonight, none of which are assisted. So that's 236 points now, without a single assisted basket over the last 5 games.
That in another era or in another place, that would be called gunning. But it's a necessity for this team right now. And if you're somebody else on that roster, how are you going to facilitate for a guy who needs no facilitation? He doesn't need anybody else to get him a shot.
Right.
He's a one-man band in terms of creating, executing, he doesn't need anybody else to get him shots. That's the beautiful thing about when they have a healthy Chris Paul, is that they can actually take turns. Chris Paul creating for everybody else or himself, James creating for everybody else or himself, but you can pass that baton back and forth between two of the greatest of their eras and maybe of all time.
Think about the shots he takes as well. I don't know how many players in NBA history have ever executed the blueprint of the organization better than James Harden. When you think about Daryl Morey at the forefront of analytics, and what they want, as you know by now, is layups and dunks. They want three-pointers. They want free throws. That's all James Harden takes. He gets to the rim and finishes. He gets to the foul line and finishes, or he knocks down threes.
Yeah, and he does it efficiently as well. I mean, again, in doing it to Seku's point where, you know, the defense is not concerned with the other guys. You know, so like, whereas if that guy's a three-point shooter, man, I got to be a step closer to him. You know, I want to help, but I know I got to get back to him. Well, they don't have that issue. Like, they're generally loading to him, and he's still good enough to get beyond two defenders and still create good opportunities.
All right, 36 tonight for James Harden at the half in New York, where they trailed the Knicks 63-58. Keeping our eye on everything else around the. You know, there are only 15 teams in each conference, right?
Yeah. I thought that was rhetorical.
Check
My
the
bad.
standings. That's really for everybody. The Grizzlies are 14 in the Western Conference. That's not great. At 19-28, so they're getting a head start on the trade season. Reports confirmed today, in fact, that both Mike Conley and Marc Gasol are now available for trade. Here's their reaction this morning at shoot-around.
It's where we're at, I guess. You know, it's part of the business. You know, it's not like we've been traded yet or anything like that. It's part of it, and you know, we knew with the way things have been going the last few weeks that anything can happen.
That's not going to change, is it? That's not going to change to me. So, you know, my relationship with the Grizzlies might change, but my relationship with Memphis won't.
Now, for more, let's bring in David Cobb, who covers the Grizzlies for the Memphis Commercial Appeal. And David, this story isn't the only thing heating up there. Apparently, there was a fire in the team locker room this afternoon. What happened?
Yeah, you put Marc Gasol and Mike Conley on the trading block, and the locker room literally catches on fire today. A light dropped in the sauna and sent smoke throughout the building, and everybody had to evacuate just 3 hours before tip-off. So the Grizzlies tonight are operating out of the Memphis Tigers locker room here at the FedEx Forum.
Wow, rich people problems. The light falls into the sauna, right?
Exactly.
Well, for a lot of us, the writing has been on the wall in Memphis in terms of their future and perhaps unloading the Stars, seeing what they could get. What was the tipping point for Robert Pera and management now?
Well, it was the Monday loss to the Pelicans. They lost by 20 at home to a Pelicans team that was playing without Anthony Davis. And this loss came on the Martin Luther King Jr. Day celebration game, which is a big, big day for the city every year, in front of a packed house. And it was, I think, the death knell, so to speak, in terms of, you know, any hope that this Conley-Gasol reiteration was going to take this team anywhere this year.
Well, both players carry huge price tags. Gasol has another year at $25 million plus. He could also opt out. Assuming he reaches a games played incentive, which seems likely, Mike Conley has 2 years and $67 million left after this season. How do those deals complicate the trades that could be out there for the Grizzlies?
Well, I think it minimizes what the Grizzlies can expect to get in return for either of them. If you flash back a decade ago, they traded Pau Gasol and they got 2 first-round picks and Marc Gasol back from the Lakers in the deal. Well, Pau Gasol was 27 in the prime of his career at the time. Both of these guys are past 30. They're past their primes, and they've got these huge contracts. And so I think that really kind of minimizes what the Grizzlies are going to be able to get for him. And they've got to be realistic as they listen to these offers, because if they've got, you know, these grand visions of getting back a star player or a bevy of first-round picks, I don't think that's going to happen.
Well, those aren't the only 2 huge contracts on the roster either. Reportedly, the Grizzlies are also trying to find a new home for Chandler Parsons, who also makes a ton of money, hasn't played since October. Will a team looking to trade for either Conley or Gasol have to take on Parsons' contract as well?
How could they? I mean, what team has that amount of cap space? You know, unless they've just got a ton of dead money that they can send back that the Grizzlies are willing to take. then I don't see how that would work. But I guess it's not impossible, but it would take a real talented mathematician to figure that one out.
There are a few of those giant contracts in the summer of 2016 that teams are looking to move at this time here in 2019. We'll find out soon enough. Appreciate the time, David. Good to talk to you, and enjoy the game tonight. David Cobb from the Memphis Commercial Appeal. All right, guys, when you look ahead to these two, obviously both talented players. Gasol's a three-time All-Star, former Defensive Player of the Year. Conley, much discussed, one of the best players, if not the best in the league, who has not made an All-Star team yet, but they've got these big numbers following them wherever they go. What kind of market do you think there is for either?
I think it's robust for both of them in theory.
In theory, yeah.
But it becomes a much more difficult prospect when you look at the numbers, specifically on Conley's deal. And then for Gasol, I know it makes sense that you'd want a big man with his resume, but does he fit in a lot of these places is the question. They've been married to a certain style, GA, that whole grit and grind ideal that they've played in basically, certainly for Conley's entire career in Memphis. It's the only place he's ever played. I don't think he's known. Marc Gasol, likewise, has been ingrained in this thing. I mean, this is the way they've come up playing in this league. You're asking them both to step out of a comfort zone that's been really good to them and for years really good to Memphis. Now you're talking about, can you just take these guys as individual talents and plug them in anywhere? I'm not sure, Matt, it's as simple as that.
It's absolutely not simple. The one advantage you do have, both guys have the necessary skill set to play the game today. Both can shoot it, both can pass it, both can defend it. I would say both have high basketball IQs. So then it becomes a matter of, does the contract make sense? When you look at Gasol's number, you say, well, it's a big number, but he doesn't have 4 more years on it.
Right.
And there's a scenario, I would think, where he might be willing to go somewhere and not opt in the last year and sign an extension.
Like his brother did in San Antonio.
Like his brother did.
Yeah.
And if he's got a chance to maybe go somewhere where he can be a significant difference maker. Because as good as both those guys are, the problem for Memphis is their 2 best players aren't good enough to be the best players on a really good team.
Right.
But if they're your 3rd best player or 4th best player, you're a really, really good basketball team. And so then you got to juxtapose that against the salary. And oftentimes with some of the younger teams that are making a push for the postseason, you can take that salary on because you haven't paid your young stars completely. So
Brooklyn, for instance.
Yeah, Brooklyn makes a lot of sense for me when you start looking at them. And also I would think Memphis, because Brooklyn is going to have first-round picks that could potentially be lottery picks, which is obviously something. That's not the ideal scenario if you're Memphis. But keep in mind, Memphis is not a team that's going to be able to participate in an A-list free agent market. They can sign free agents, but they're not getting the superstars.
Right.
So for them, those draft picks become vitally important because you do want to be able to develop within, much like they did with Jaren Jackson Jr., who could potentially end up being one of those guys at the forefront, like the guys they have on their roster, in essence, who they were able to draft.
So quickly, we're up against time here. What's a realistic haul coming back to the Grizzlies? Or is it just a matter of do whatever you can to get out from under these deals and reset?
No, I think they want young talent.
I mean, I know they want
first-round picks. I do think there's enough value because of the talent of those 2 players that they could get what they want back. It's just a matter of if it pans out long-term, if they're able to rebuild. Do they trust that front office? Because they probably should have done this about a year and a half.
Much sooner than this. And do you get one of them moved and not the other? That's that's going to be the difficult part.
Right.
When's the last time a team was able to move 2 veteran contracts like this at the same deadline?
Agree with Parsons.
And then if you think Parsons is going to be a part of that as well, that's a whole lot of moving to do between now and the trade.
I don't see a
3 guys who make $25 million and up.
Yeah, I don't see a scenario where you're going to move all 3.
Yeah.
No, it seems unlikely. That would be the dream right now.
That'd be the executive of the year.
Yes. All right, much more to get to on the way. We'll revisit the night Klay Thompson got hot, even by Klay Thompson standards, and that's saying something.